Welcome to the 10k subs Q&A. Thanks for the support so far. We've got some good questions, but before we get into that, let's just have a quick refresher about what this channel is about. How did an English teacher get involved in the topics that I like to talk about? Why aren't I just talking about what happens in the last chapter of Christmas Carol and GCSE mark schemes? Well, that's a narrow, reductionist view of what English is. English is the intellectual, spiritual tradition of Western civilization as given form in language, to use Ernst Robert Curtius's famous definition in European literature and the Latin Middle Ages, a book that doesn't really get recommended on degenerate university literature courses. So I'm interested in lots of things, and this channel is about helping people reconnect to their roots, to resist and rebuild. Why? Because to destroy a people, you first have to sever their roots. As Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, to deracinate means literally to uproot. And most of you haven't got a clue what your roots are. So you drift around. What's a man? What's a woman? Well, hear ye, degenerates. Being a man means having the potential for fatherhood. Being a woman means having a potential for motherhood. Everything else is nonsense. The family is the foundation, and that is a big part of what this channel is about. On that note, let's get into the first question. My bio and career prior to Eton. Well, I've got 6 kids. I had my first when I was 20, and I am happily married. But men can't be happily married nowadays, and there's things in the water that mean we can't get anyone pregnant. Shh! I don't want to hear any of that here. I was educated in the state school system until I got a scholarship to an independent school, part academic, part sport, and then I studied English, classics, and history for A-level, and then read English language and literature at University College London. I mentored young offenders at university and then worked as a manual labourer for a bit afterwards because I couldn't find any teaching jobs straight away. I then worked in a national challenge state school, secondary modern, and then moved to Highgate School in London and then to Eton College after that. Next question. How do you assure your wife and keep her comfortable while doing what you do? Well, first, what do you mean by comfort? And why do you think it is so important? Humans aren't built for comfort. Physically, comfort can be very bad for us. You get fat, you get weak. Spiritually, comfort's probably even worse. Western civilization is built on the image of a man dying in agony on the cross. My wife supports and respects what I do because she likes the fact that I'm not a shimmying, shuffling half man. I'm not going around letting lies seep into me, making me more and more resentful by the day. She also respects and supports what I do because the alternative of staying quiet about things that I know are a threat to my children's future is far, far worse. I bet most of the people who think that keeping their wives comfortable is about buying them material things the entire time also expect their wives to work. One of my big priorities in life is making sure that my wife doesn't have to work so she can spend her time with our children. What advice or rules of thumb can you give someone in an organization that is at some stage of being taken over by woke? Tread lightly and try to change it from the inside over time, or push hard because the longer you leave it, the more power they will have. Keep up daily resistance. No appeasement. Appeasement is only ever taken as weakness. No apologizing either for the same reason. If you apologize, it's just like sharks smelling blood in the water. Now, if you push hard, consistently, if you don't appease, you'll probably end up losing your position. But that's fine, because it was going to disappear anyway while you were still in it, and your integrity would disappear with it. Do you understand? People who manage to keep their positions while thinking they're resisting, yet actually seeing things deteriorate around them, are getting all the proof they need that their supposed resistance is totally ineffective. The difference is they lose their integrity and they'll have the disappointment of realizing there's no happy ever after. How can a man find peace when he knows it is inevitable his society will decline? Well, society's got no existence separate from the individuals who comprise it. Ultimately, it's a set of relations between individuals. And it's not inevitable that you will decline if you take steps to avoid it. So look at history and learn from it. Luxury breeds complacency and degeneracy follows. Once mature, should males generally be dominant over females? Well, dominance only occurs within the male sex, never between males and females. So males aren't ever dominant over females. There's no dominance hierarchy with a man interacting with women. In fact, men defer to women, refusing to engage in dominance submission patterns of behavior. If I help an old lady across the road, I'm not dominating her. Now, men should lead women. That is what women have shaped men for via sexual selection, and they find that attractive, but leading isn't dominating. Essential reading for young men. Well, I don't think any reading is, strictly speaking, essential. Which of you, by taking thought, can add 1 cubit to his stature? Jesus didn't write anything. Now, Aristotle said that the man who devotes himself to a life of learning has chosen wisely from among the things of this world and will probably be happier than most men. But if you expect full satisfaction from anything you can get in books, then you are chasing a phantom. What limited knowledge is available to human beings in this life comes at the cost of great toil. And even then, you're not going to get perfect clarity. You will also never complete it, not even in the longest life. And what you will know in the end will ultimately be disappointing and unsatisfactory. St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the greatest human minds ever, said that his life's work was just straw. Much human learning has also been put in the service of evil. There's a great line in Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men where Slim says, "Smart guys ain't hardly ever nice fellas." Think about it. But with those caveats mentioned, studying human nature is more useful, certainly, than not. And there are some reading recommendations on my Substack, which you can find the link to in the pinned comment. So click on that and subscribe. I've already got a channel warning on YouTube and the whole thing could disappear at any moment. So give me your email and then we can stay in touch. What branch of history or philosophy do you think is most overlooked / underappreciated? Military history and metaphysics for sure. The reality of human history is war, punctuated by brief periods of peace. Man is a fallen creature. But the woke worldview is that peace will one day reign uninterrupted. Man will bring heaven down to earth. Now, of course, in reality, the attempt to achieve that has always succeeded only in raising hell. The most bloodless political philosophies have created the bloodiest realities. Now, metaphysics is neglected because positivism defines science as that which can be mathematically measured. And since virtue and vice can't be measured like this, then of course they don't exist. And human conduct, because it's as a result of free will, is too unpredictable and likewise doesn't fit that paradigm. Now, of course, this is nonsense. That view of science is self-refuting. What's the scientific proof of it? Should everyone get punched in the face at least once? No, you can die from it. And if you don't, the pain doesn't even last long enough to be a genuine test of fortitude anyway. You shouldn't go around seeking or starting fights either. That's not masculine. Who is your favorite Islamic conqueror? Tamerlane the Great, because his life story is a reminder of the importance of war. Hobbes or Rousseau? Well, both were wrong, but Hobbes was less disastrously wrong. Most of the errors rampant in our time have their roots in Rousseau. This question needs too much philosophical and political background to get into in this format, so you can look at the full article on Substack for my detailed answer. But basically, human beings once existed in a state of blithe, carefree harmony and happiness, just skipping around in forests like little elves, playing on flutes. There was no war, there was no disagreement, there was no discord. Everything was fine. And then private property got invented, and that's where all the problems started. And this is nonsense. Private property has always existed. So has pair bonding. Now, Hobbes also imagined a pre-political state of nature. Both these thinkers differ from Aristotle, who said that man is by nature a political animal. It's just that Rousseau sees pre-political man as peaceful, whereas Hobbes sees pre-political man as a wolf to man, savage, ruthless. In his famous description, primitive man lives in a state of the war of all against all. Are you familiar with Edmund Burke? Yes, he barely discussed sexual morality or family structure at all, but he still had some good insights. In particular, he said that revolutionaries leave nothing which engages the affections on the part of the Commonwealth. He also believed that the French Revolution was a satanic assault on the divine order of things, and that it could not be appeased, and neither can its ideological descendants. Racial differences in IQ, facts, and myths. Well, I've got a couple of videos on this that you can watch, but the main point is that race is a materialistic view of human beings, and people on the right who try to reduce things to that are falling into the same trap as Marxists on the left, who try to reduce things to mere economic determinism. It's just racial rather than economic. What can the faithful do to help purge rampant homosexuality from the ranks of Catholic clergy? Well, the first thing is people shouldn't be surprised that there are corrupt elements within the Catholic Church. Anything involving fallen human beings is going to involve corruption. But the point is that although some of the fruit, some of the leaves of the tree are rotten, the roots connect to a divine source. And the catechism is unchanged. It still describes homosexuality as objectively disordered. And the Catholic Church is the only Christian denomination to refuse to concede ground on contraception. But the attack on the church probably involves more than merely human forces, and the counter-attack will therefore require that as well. How to make the family unit work effectively. Everyone, men and women, has grown up on feminist indoctrination. So you might think that you're an anti-feminist man, but are you really? Are you expecting your wife to pay for her own car, her own clothes? Well, in that case, you're more feminist than you think you are. If you want the trad wife, then you need to man up to the trad life. If you're treating her like a feminist, don't be surprised if she is one. Now, the sexual revolution actually liberated men far more than it did women, and women regret it more than men do. For men, it just meant easier access to sex, strings-free sex. The main thing men want in life, sex, was given to them without the responsibilities that come with it. Now, if you're not taking on responsibilities, remind me, why do you deserve respect? Women want men who will lead them, not use them for sex, then leave them. So if you want respect, gain trust and respect through benevolent leadership. Create a space where she is safe to flower into her femininity. The search for meaning and a productive life is a special topic of import today, especially as regards young men, obviously. But what of those middle-aged? How do they preserve Kipling's will to hold on the downward slope with maybe half their life remaining? This is ultimately a spiritual problem. If by hold on you mean stay alive, then the implication is that suffering is ultimately meaningless. That is the logical consequence of the philosophies of hedonism, pleasure for the individual, or utilitarianism, pleasure for the group. But no philosophy or religion that has stood the test of time has said that pleasure is the main point of life. In fact, although suffering has been seen as having no earthly merit, it has been seen as one of the greatest sources of merit for man in the next life. So a heroic man facing it with courage and patience inspires others and honors himself and God. How do Europeans who have a strong sense of individualism and tend to act and make decisions as individuals coexist successfully with people who have a strong sense of racial, cultural, religious identity and demonstrate strong in-group preference? Well, the strong sense of individualism that you mentioned there is a consequence of liberalism, which regards autonomy as the supreme good. But rather than autonomy, the basic fact of human life is dependency. You are born as a baby into a family you depend on. When you grow up and your parents grow old, they also depend on you in turn. Your dependence on your fellow human beings extends beyond the family to other people on whom you rely to meet your needs and develop your skills and abilities. This fact of human nature is reflected not just in families, but in villages, tribes, cities, states, nations. And this social organization participates in our rationality. It isn't mere herd behavior. Human beings have a culture that needs to be transmitted, handed on. We don't get it through our genes. Instinct isn't enough for a human child. He has to be initiated into his cultural heritage. Those traditions are a trust we are tasked with handing down, and wokeness is a dereliction of that duty. For more content to stop you becoming a degenerate, subscribe.